Hey, Steven, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, Yam?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks a lot for joining. I mean, I know you're on holiday, but it means a lot. You've
Yeah,
experienced tons of great things, so super pumped to have you today.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm hopeful that share some of my experience and it helps some other organizations, take off and see some of the success that we've seen.
Awesome. So for all of you who are watching this, please let us know in the chat. You can type 1 if you are working in sales, or type 2 if you're working as a founder or in a startup, and type 3 if you're in marketing. We often have some people in marketing as well. So always interesting to see what people are doing. Also, let us know if you can hear us well. Okay, I can see some salespeople already. That's cool. Okay, founders. Nice. 1, 2, 3. Okay, someone is doing everything. This is another founder, I think. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. So people in marketing also. So that's a bit of a mix, and we'll try to make it work for everyone. So the person I'm welcoming today knows what it takes to go from 4 sales rep to about 400 in total. So account executive plus SDRs. I mean, Steven, you had tons of learnings during your journey, and
We did.
and I feel like this is the perfect time to share it with us. So thanks again for being here. I'm thinking it's going to be really amazing. So for those of you who don't know you, maybe can you give a quick intro?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Steven Bryerton. I'm the SVP and head of sales here for ZoomInfo. So I've been in the space for about 15 years, 11 years. 11 plus years. I've been at ZoomInfo. Prior, we were Discover.org. Prior to the acquisition of ZoomInfo, and then since rebranding of ZoomInfo. And as Guillaume said, when I started, there were literally 10, maybe 12 people in the company in total. And really our co-founders doing the selling, and one other sales rep and one customer success manager and an account manager. And then we've sort of grown every way or every step of the way since then. So I'll be able to hopefully provide some insight into some of the things that we did, that we're still doing, and some of the mistakes along the way that hopefully you can learn from and not repeat, and maybe get to some of that success a little bit quicker than perhaps we did.
That's awesome. If we can all go public as quickly as you did, that would be nice.
It wasn't the way that we envisioned going public in the middle of a global pandemic and doing an entirely virtual, first sort of ever virtual roadshow. But nonetheless, it was certainly a nice milestone in our business, and we're still looking forward to bigger and better things.
Awesome. You want to get started with the slides?
Yeah, let's jump right on it. So as you mentioned, we're going to focus on how we've structured here at ZoomInfo our sales organization, and some of the changes that we've made over the years, some of the things that are consistent throughout. I just mentioned who I am, so there you go, a little bit of headshot. So now you get me in person and a static shot. And as we go, yeah, exactly. And as we go through this, just keep in mind, being, as you mentioned, now a public company, and we are going to take a look sort of behind the scenes of ZoomInfo and perhaps talk about a few things that are forward looking. That my only ask of you is, if you do decide to purchase ZoomInfo or invest in ZoomInfo, that you take a look at those forward-looking statements. And so here's that safe harbor. So now that I've covered my lawyer's checkboxes and the business's legal team, let's just talk about a little bit about the structure of ZoomInfo and sort of where we're located. This is just a North American view, so we have sellers now globally as well in some of our offices, like in Israel, for instance, and we're growing in the UK region specifically as well. But when I started at Discover.org, we're based and still headquartered out of Vancouver, Washington. So that was our primary base of operations. And then through the years and multiple acquisitions, we started to collect talent in all of these other locations. So you see Conshohocken, Pennsylvania there. That was an office that was spun out as we looked to really start to scale and grow our sales team. We brought in a sales leader who said, hey, I have a network here, former company, former reps that used to work for me. I think we could spin up an office quickly. And so that was a great way to get really solid talents really, really quickly, which is why you see that office. Bethesda, Maryland comes from an acquisition that we made of Rain King. Again, great talent. We continue to develop there. Waltham, Massachusetts is the big number there. That was the acquisition of ZoomInfo. And so, for all intents and purposes, that's where a lot of our sellers are, sort of bi-coastal and in Vancouver and in Waltham. And then across Bethesda, Conshohocken, Grand Rapids was another legacy ZoomInfo office. And then you see San Francisco, Salt Lake, and Atlanta as a result of acquisition. And one of the things that, has been really successful for us is you look at these markets and they aren't, the tier one, the New Yorks, for the most part, the Boston, while Waltham is just outside Boston. We're out in the suburbs a little bit, San Francisco, Seattle, et cetera. So there is a little bit less competition for talent. We're able to bring that talent in, get them, bought into the culture in the locations that we are. The DiscoverOrg ZoomInfo brand, it carries a lot of weight. And so that we're lucky enough to have a lot of people want to come to work to the organization. And then we do have, the San Francisco, the Waltham, and Atlanta's for, perhaps specific tier one type talent or positions.
Okay.
So,
and do you feel like there is actually like a need for you to have these offices in different cities, or did you ever think or reconsider about centralizing maybe everything to one HQ in the US, or maybe one on each coast? Or
yeah, it's a good question. My answer has changed a lot over the last 18 months. And the reason why I say that is we were, and hopefully still will be to a certain extent, we were very much an in-office culture. A lot of our success came from being in office, being together, sharing that, what we call sort of tribal knowledge, right? Where, you and I are sitting next to each other out on the floor, and, I hear you struggle maybe with an objection, and I say, hey, yeah, this has been working really well for me. Give that a shot, right? And so there's that instant feedback loop. Today, though, we're obviously all virtual. And so, and we've actually expanded our sort of hiring focus to look beyond, the four walls, if you will, of where our office locations are. And so I think, moving forward, there will be very much a mix. We have a lot of employees that can't wait to get back in office. It's not easy working at home, with kids and family and distractions. And so there are people that really want to get there. We have, leaders that really want to get there and help foster that talent. And then there's others that do really well remotely and have shown that, we can manage the business, obviously, in a remote culture.
Awesome.
So now that's the stage. One of the unique things and how we've been able to scale really, really quickly, one of our biggest area of success is, and what we've been able to do is bring people in at a relatively lower level. And so more often than not, this is sort of their first, second job out of college, and we're bringing them in as a sales development rep. And so when we, first started and we've had sellers, this was one of the mistakes that we made early on, was we were hiring sales reps. We were lucky enough to be able to drive a large volume of leads. So we were driving a lot of inbound traffic. We still do, drive north of 10,000 MQLs a month. So it is a high volume. But one of the mistakes that we had made was, as we were hiring sellers, account executives, we were asking them to do two things. One, self-source and prospect and find new opportunities, and then two, work those opportunities to close. And so that was those two tasks are very, very differently, right? Like, I need to spend a bunch of time calling through qualified opportunities or looking to qualify opportunities and building pipeline, or I'm spending most of my time closing, and I struggle with one or the other. So as we started to scale, and the first thing that we did was we tested, hey, can we go outbound? Since right now we were all living on an inbound motion, we went and hired a third party sales appointment firm that would set the meetings up for my account executives. We would work them to close, and that process started to work. And so that's where we said, okay, there's something here. We can probably build this internally. Let's start to do it. So we started to hire SDRs, and you see the delineation at the bottom there between inbound and outbound.
Yeah.
Again, that was sort of the second mistake that we had made. As we started to hire sales development reps now, we asked them to do both of those tasks. So, hey, I need you to respond to these leads as they come inbound, but I also need you going out after these accounts in an outbound motion. And again, very left brain, right brain tasks. Inbound, it's all about speed to lead. The faster you can get back to that inbound inquiry, the better off you are. You have like a 10x conversion rate if you get back to them within the first 5 minutes versus the first hour. And so for us, we made that bifurcation. Again, it was one of the early mistakes that we made. And then we said, okay, now we're just going to hire people for the inbound team. And that's all they're going to do. They're just going to field the inbound leads. Now we can be solely focused on increasing our conversion rates within those leads. It also allowed us to have a cultural tenet that said, look, the SLA for getting back to these leads is within 90 seconds. So we respond to every lead within 90 seconds. And then we could start to have an outbound team that's all they do is go after the outbound. And this career progression not only enables us to have a great bench of talents progressing throughout the organization, the biggest advantage is that it allows us to get value out of brand new hires literally within 2 weeks. So after onboarding and training, those inbound SDRs are fielding those inbound leads, which typically you don't have to have every objection mastered. You don't have to have the perfect pitch. You don't have to have all of the product knowledge. It's really just, hey, what brought you in today? Let me set you up with my account executive. Does this time or that time work? So it allows them to get that motion quickly.
Okay, and just to be 100% sure that I understood correctly, here what we see is that when someone joins, he will start as an inbound SDR. Then after 5 months, he would be in a pooled outbound SDR. Then after 8 months, paired, and then later on, he can become a commercial AE, then corporate, and strategic, etc. Is that it?
Yeah, typically, although all of these timelines have sort of condensed. But it is a rough guideline. We're moving sales development reps into account executives as early as 8 to 9 months. And then again, sort of as late as 18 months. But even then, that pool of talent and sort of the box at the top there, they're not just feeding my team and the account executive team. They're a feeder for our entire business. So they're going to, product management because they use ZoomInfo every single day in a seller's role. And so they have like great feedback for product and they can QA and test things. They move into demand gen because some of them write, great emails that convert at a really high level and they've got their own sequences. And so we move them into our rev gen team. We move them into account management, into onboarding managers, learning and development. So my colleague, Brian, who runs that team, unfortunately, the business is always pilfering from his team and he has to constantly hire a new talent pipeline. So in a perfect world, we would always go through this progression. Now, because we are scaling so quickly, that it's impossible to always be pulling from the SDR team. So we do hire externally and have, increased our external hire focus. And we are bringing in account executives into the business. They are almost always brought in sort of at the commercial or corporate level, simply for the fact that those opportunities, aren't as large, let's say. And so there's not as much risk if they're still getting up to speed and learning our process and pitch and so on. So it is definitely a build.
And basically, you must monitor the conversion rate from the marketing lead, qualified lead to the self-qualified lead. So when the inbound SDR pass it on to an AE, do you basically see that, question is, have you tested having maybe more experienced inbound SDR that will also, try to convert them? So like full sales process. and what were kind of like the results or in terms of conversions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see that, we do test that, and we do have they also, those inbound SDRs, a lot of them, if they may not go necessarily to an outbound role, some of them become team leads for the inbound team, and they really become, to your point, that anchor of the inbound team that can really increase the conversion rate and drive higher conversion. So that is really what that team is being measured on. And we measure it daily. We meet consistently. We meet week over week to monitor the rate of conversion on those leads. And by doing it daily at that cadence, it enables to see, like, hey, what happened today? Was it the quality of leads? Did we drive too much? We have to think about SDR capacity. So where is that sweet spot, so that if we have too few SDRs and they just can't respond to them all, our conversion rate suffers. If we have too many, so that's always a balancing act as well. But we have found that if we can staff up that inbound team, it is directly correlated to an increase in conversion rates and keeping the volume of leads lower per SDR to maximize our results and output.
Nice, that's interesting. And some question from the chat, which I also like asking myself, like, what the difference really between pooled outbound SDR and paired outbound SDR?
Yeah, let me skip it and I'll come back. So I think this will help answer some of those questions on this slide. So when we look at our outbound team, the difference between pooled and one-to-one is, or pooled and paired, I should say, is sort of the one-to-one versus many-to-many. So the way that looks, and I'll talk a little bit about how we route leads, but as leads or as accounts are divvied out to the sales development reps to go out and focus on, there will be a pool of SDRs. They're all color coded. So we have like the green team and orange team and purple and iron and gold. So they have a pool here of SDRs, and they are going after accounts. And as they set an appointment, they're sort of round robining it out across the account executives. So we don't really have, we don't, aside from our European focus, we don't really have a geographical focus when it comes to our European leads and our European sales. We do have a team that is dedicated to that region and some of the other global regions. But when it comes to North America, if we go back to that slide, we think about it more in terms of account size. And so commercial, corporate, strategic plus. For us, one of the things that we're using, and this is where we use ZoomInfo data, is an attribute field to help predict success, is the number of sales reps the prospect has. So yeah, that's not usually an easy data point to get. We're lucky enough to use ZoomInfo's data, so that every lead or every account, we know how many sellers this account has, and then that dictates which group it is. So commercial is for us 0 to 5 sales reps, corporate 5 to 25, strategic 25 to 250, strat plus 250 plus.
And so when question about like a qualification, are the outbound team checking themselves like which account they should go after, or is it from the marketing team basically like a building list or like a set of companies for each outbound sales rep?
Yep, it is primarily driven through our RevGen team. That is essentially they're ingesting ZoomInfo data is really at the core of it. We use our own platform in every step of the motion. So that we're ingesting, account data. They're ingesting our intent data. They're ingesting scoop data to then dictate which accounts we should go after now and why. And then they push those out to the sales development reps. And then those sales development reps, the outbound team will go after them. Again, if they're in a many-to-many, they'll set it and then they'll round robin it out to the team based on who's next in the queue. And we're monitoring for the account executives as close as we possibly can, the volume that they're getting, so that no one is starved out and no one is getting too much. So that sort of distribution engine continues to run and then suggest, okay, this is the AE that needs it. their availability will be checked at that time. And if they can't do it, it'll go to the next person. But that AE that maybe got skipped stays at the top of the queue.
Okay.
When it comes to the one-to-one and the pair team, and I'll take a step back to that slide here. This is where you see, that sort of they're our most tenured sales development reps. And this is the team that is likely going into the account executive or into other areas of the business. So the reason why we pair them here one-to-one is because now all of a sudden they have like a great sort of mentor-mentee relationship with our most senior account executives. So they're the ones that are working with that strategic and strategic plus group.
Okay.
So they're our top performers paired with our top performers, and they're getting a crash course on the sales cycle, getting opportunities rejuvenated. Hey, you sent me this one. It was great. It has since died off. Let's go wider. Let's get a larger buying committee. Let's send a thoughtful message here. Let's use this play there. And then that really helps their progression so that when they become an account executive, they ramp significantly faster than when we hire those from an external process.
Nice. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And do you also, because you're mentioning that you kind of like split the top performer and the one that are not performing as well, do you also is the RevGen team giving specifically to the top performers? Or do you see it's just round robin and you don't really check that part?
Yeah, in the one-to-one SDRs, they are working sort of more strategic, better fit accounts, if you will, for the most part. They do have the ability to grab an account they think might be a good fit, or the AE can direct them to say, hey, no one's on this one. I saw this interesting scoop here, or whatever. Let's go after it. Okay. And sort of pull it into their pool to go after. But yeah, the RevGen team is sort of constantly cycling in accounts and taking accounts out based on, maybe they've exhausted it. The SDR has the ability to say, no, I don't want to go after that one. I'm going to return it back into the pool, or, hey, I've done as much as I can here. I just can't break through it. Let's push it back to RevGen. Maybe we'll provide more air cover and marketing support to try to warm it up a little bit, and then we'll go back after it.
Okay, awesome.
One of the big things, I think there's a question in here about sort of a full stack sales. I'm going to get to that, I promise, because I will talk about that one because it is a good question. And through some of the acquisitions we have had sort of very differences of opinion here, but I'll tell you where we've landed and why. But before
because that's what we do at Lemlist, we're full stack. So I'm curious to hear
I have some strong opinions on it. So if I take a look sort of holistically, take a sort of macro approach to it, we are using data, and it is not just ZoomInfo data. We are sort of constantly measuring at every step along the way so that we can see where things might be broken, where we can optimize some things, where we can continue to lean in and maybe drive more results. And so the demand gen, as I mentioned, the RevGen team, they're the ones that are sourcing those hot leads, their events and syndication. They're also, we're warming the MQLs. What we're doing is we use obviously a lead scoring model. We're enriching it with ZoomInfo, and we're using ZoomInfo's form complete solution so that we can optimize both lead capture and lead quality. So for instance, we use form complete. Form complete, all it does really is when somebody goes to fill out a form, even if you only have one field on that, maybe just the email field, it pulls in all of the ZoomInfo data to get your title and revenue and your phone number and the number of sales reps that you have, and are you using Salesforce or Marketo? What's the rest of your tech stack? It essentially pulls in all of the ZoomInfo data using that form complete. And so we monitored, we measured, we tested, and for us to get the best mix of both lead volume and lead quality, for us, we landed on 3 fields on our forms. So when you go to a form, you'll see 3 fields. Everything else we can enrich with ZoomInfo. If a key data point is missing, it can automatically sort of prompt that. Like if maybe number of sellers, if we didn't have that data for you, it would just say, hey, how many sales reps do you have? So it doesn't feel like a big lift, but we get that crucial data point for us.
Nice.
So that's what dictates the lead capture and therefore the lead routing. And so those inbound SDRs are the ones that are gonna field it. The SWAT team, you see there, that SWAT SDR and that sales development, that is where they initially go from inbound to outbound. So this is their first step in sort of the outbound motion. The leads that they're working are typically almost always those event leads, content syndication leads. So it's not entirely cold like it would be in a full outbound motion. It's also not, in a full hand raiser like it would be in the inbound. So it's a little bit of sort of pull and education. So again, we can sort of start to build their skill set and get them better at what they do before progressing on to the next level. And then you go into that outbound motion fully. Now, when they set a demo, we are optimizing how we route those. I touched on it a little bit earlier. So we're looking at rep capacity in comparison to the demo quota they need to be successful. We're also looking at the sort of quality of that lead or the score of that demo and that lead. And again, it's based on things like title. It's based on industry or micro industry in some cases for us. Those are some of the best indicators of how good this opportunity is going to be. And then also that number of sales reps. And then after that, we use, some data points around if they're using Salesforce or a Marketo, for our business, that shows a level of sophistication and increases our win rate. And then we route those AEs in an optimized way. And I'm going to touch on that when I talk about how we grade our AEs. Now, the AEs, they handle everything from that initial demo all the way up to the close of the very first sale. So that's all they do. They're solely focused on new logo acquisition. They, a ZoomInfo AE, I tell them all the time, they are pretty spoiled because they do very little, if any, prospecting. Some reps do if they feel like their pipeline is light, they actively prospect. A lot of them came from the SDR ranks, as we saw earlier, so they have the prospecting chops. But for the most part, every day they're walking in, to 2 to 3 new conversations a day served up by our rev gen, marketing, and sales development team. And then we have sales consultants, solutions engineers. They're sort of called different things in all different businesses, but for some of the more technical sales, for maybe sort of large scale data enrichment, they're coming in and overlaying and supporting the opportunity.
Just a quick question on that, because you were saying that they go from the demo up to the first closing. How exactly the transition? Because the SDR did the discovery call, got a lot of information. How exactly do you manage that the relationship stays intact, and also that all the information are passed on correctly from the SDR to the AE? Have you set up a process, or is there anything in particular?
We have, yeah. So this is, as we've gotten more sophisticated, we do use a lot of automation to help with that, and that knowledge transfer specifically. So the SDR, once that notice, hey, you're going to set this demo for Steve, and then they book it, the meeting invite will automatically come from the SDR. It'll go to the prospect, it'll go to the AE, and then it'll have hey, thanks so much for connecting. We're really looking forward to speaking with you at blah, blah, blah time. And there's a note that goes out again from that SDR with the AE so that they can see this was set. In addition, there's a process where the SDRs have a handful of questions that hopefully they're getting some of the data on. They can enter in some notes. As soon as they fill that in, that gets captured in Salesforce and CRM. But we also kick that email out directly to the account executive, because they're not always living in Salesforce or checking the event or going to the account to see all of those notes. A lot of times they live sort of in their inbox. And so they have that sort of full overview of, okay, I'm speaking with Guillaume, he's CEO, they talked about this, he's really interested in this piece, whatever, is captured. In addition to that, prior to the demo going off, we have an automated survey that will go out to the prospect. So again, this helps sort of bridge that gap where it'll come from the account executive and it'll say, hey, I've got some notes here from SDR who you spoke with, just to make sure we make the most out of our time. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes You can fill out 4 or 5 questions. It'll really help guide our conversation and make sure it's as valuable for you as possible. And so that is another way for us to get like some more granular information and again, focus the conversation. It's also another indicator of the lead quality and our likely success thereafter. Because if you're willing to take that 5 minutes of time from when the demo was set to when the demo was booked and give me as a seller a little bit of that information, we see a big jump in win rate. We see a big jump in ASP. Those are very qualified prospects. So that's another way that we're help sort of priming the pump and gear the account executives to the right opportunities. Nice. And then again, all of that is captured in CRM, kicked out to the AEs and SDRs. And then we have a very similar process, essentially is the exact same process when they close that sale and they pass it over to the account management team. So we have our account managers, we have an onboarding manager that just focuses on the onboarding experience. And then we have our LDMs, which are learning and development managers, to do trainings and consistent education for the customer throughout the life cycle of their journey with us.
So how exactly does that work? Like the training, do you have like a specific training per account? It depends on the account size, or do you automate things, or is it something really like a live demo where people ask their questions?
Yeah, so it does depend on sort of account size or spend. And then we do have additional support. So people can opt in and select our preferred support package or platinum support package. But and that will, again, vary based on all of those things. No matter what, you do get an onboarding manager to help facilitate that process of coming on board. And then, depending on size and spend, it might be sort of fully virtual, where we have our ZoomInfo University, and it has, ZoomInfo 101 and 102 and, little sort of 30-second or 2-minute clips on, hey, here's how to use this feature, or here's how to set up alerts. And then as you move up in that process, you can get sort of group trainings where a lot of people will come in and we'll train a lot of people, or one-to-one training.
Can you give maybe a range of the account size, like how much people are paying yearly from the smallest up to maybe the largest? Or
yeah, we have north of 20,000 customers, and so they are literally from small 1-2-man shops all the way up to the Fortune 100 and everybody in between. The average is right around 30,000 spend per year. That obviously can vary widely, but it's a decent average across the customer base.
Okay, nice, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And then so we do that similar process when we hand that off to the AM from the AE to that account and onboarding team. And so when the agreement gets signed, that automatically starts the process of closed won the opportunity. Again, that happens automatically. The AE goes and clicks the handoff button, and they're prompted with a handful of questions. It automatically pulls over some of the notes from their sales cycle, CRM they're using, marketing automation, the things that matter most to us. And then they fill in like any upsell potential, maybe things that were talked about, but the customer said, hey, I love this thing. I don't have the budget for it right now, or I don't have the bandwidth for it right now. So we can capture that transfer. And then as soon as they fill those things out, and they have to fill those things out, that all gets sent directly to the onboarding manager and account manager. And then there's automatic emails that go out introducing that new point of contact, and they're the ones that are going to walk through it. And then the sellers themselves throughout, like especially at the tail end of the sales process, are talking the customer through that process. So, hey, you're going to have these resources available, so on and so forth.
Nice.
And so those are some of the things that the team is measured on as well. You see CSM and CDR there, so versus AM. So AM is the account manager. They are solely focused on the revenue. So they are focused on both retention, so focused on renewals, as well as upsell potential. The customer success manager and the CDRs, what they are focused on, customer CDRs stands for customer development rep. It is just like a sales development rep. They're just doing those things into the customer base. Okay. So they're like ferreting out new user groups or new opportunities. And the customer success manager is focused on what our COO and president likes to call delight. So they're focused on making sure the customer is having a good experience, that they're driving adoption, so that, again, customer finds more value in the solution, and it doesn't, and they can go to this person for help and support, where the AM is, again, focused on the revenue. And so that's how we bifurcate things in the account and the customer side as well. So again, you'll notice if there's a theme maybe that you've picked up on here, and you can, maybe you're starting to see where my opinion is going to lie. Specialization in getting, hyper focused on a singular task. It enables us to build A players at every step of the org, as opposed to, hey, maybe I'm a semi-good closer, but I'm great at prospecting and filling the pipeline. I just really can't close it as well. Or, I'm great at landing new business, but my retention rate suffers because I'm always hunting, as opposed to, growing those existing relationships.
And what's your conversion rate from MQL to paid clients approximately?
So our win rates, they range right around 20% from opportunity creation. And so if you were to measure it a little bit earlier, it'd be in that sort of 12% range from when we first get the demo set. So they'll go off, a demo will go off about 65, 70% of the time. Okay. We have a process to go back after what we call no-shows. So if they don't show up, we'll go back after them in a strategic and thoughtful way. In fact, just by doing that, on average, we get about $1 million of ARR per month by going after that group that doesn't show up with a real focus, because we can get a third of those back, and then they'll ultimately come back in the door.
Nice. Can you detail that approach to get them back? Because no-show, I think, are a real pain for a lot of sales reps.
Yeah, it is a challenge. It eats up real estate on their calendar for both. But we compensate our SDRs on the inbound side. Again, they're focused on conversion rates, so they're paid for the completed meeting. So they have a real focus on getting the meeting to show up and be there. Same thing for the outbound side. They get compensated for the meeting being a completed good fit, and then they're also tied to revenue. So it's not just about setting stuff that shows up. It's about setting qualified stuff that actually will purchase. So they've got a two-prong approach there.
Nice, interesting.
So we've talked about this already, but again, paired, pooled, and then you'll see that many to many, they're feeding sort of all of those levels. One thing to note here, and again, I think from what I've seen, generally this is unique to our team, is that even though you might be a strategic plus or a strategic sales rep, where you get the opportunity because of your skill set to work those larger opportunities, that doesn't mean it's the only thing that they do. Because those reps tend to be our best reps, they are also the best at winning smaller deals, maybe than a commercial rep might be, or a corporate rep might be. They have a higher win rate on average. They tend to get a higher ASP, an average sales price. So one of the things that we do that's a little bit unique is we will bubble up the higher quality commercial or corporate leads based on that scoring model I talked about, and we will sort of overflow those to the strategic and strategic plus team, because otherwise they just wouldn't have enough at bats in those larger accounts to be as successful as they are. So we're keeping their volume at a level that's along with the rest of the organization, and then they can again get quicker wins, get higher wins than we might have seen from our less tenured reps. So that's another way that we really optimize for efficiency and for output for our sales reps.
Nice.
And so going back, this is the 90-second response time. So, and it's a cultural commitment. It takes place all across the org from our C-level on down. I can't tell you how many times I've walked to get a coffee with my CEO, where we've grabbed a quick bite, and he has put us on the spot, with like a Google number, and he'll submit a form and he'll test to see how fast the team gets back to him. And so we have that 90% SLA or 90-second SLA for them to get response. We're trying to get better and better about that. And even in a work from home environment and where the team is fully remote, like we're able to do this because everybody at every level of the organization knows that this is the standard and this is what we're going to abide by and this is what we're going to go hit. So it's okay that you might have to go walk the dog or, pick up your daughter from daycare or, all of those things. We know they happen. It's okay. You just have to make sure that you turn off your engine and log off of the router so that leads aren't going to you when you're not there or when you had to run to the bathroom and then getting filled up in the queue. So it really does take, like, despite the technology that I've talked about, where we use ZoomInfo, despite the processes and some of the automation that we've built in to help, it is very much a people and a culture thing that you have to solve first, and then you can layer in all of those things behind it. So once we kick those leads out to our AEs, here's another thing.
By the way, I will send you. I will make a test and time it and send it to you. Like
yes, please do. If we fail, I want to know right away. So this is one of the things that as we've gotten more mature in how we sell and as we've thought about how do we continue to optimize our go-to-market machine, how do we optimize the output of our sellers, we've come up with this scorecard. So this is an example of what that scorecard looks. This is spit out every month. So at the start, within the first few days to a week of every single month, our sales leadership gets the scorecards for all of their reps, and then they have that one-to-one and walk them through this. And again, we've laid out these specific things that we're going to focus on and KPIs, and now everybody knows exactly what they're being measured on and how to improve their performance. So for us, the 4 key variables that make up the scorecard are trailing 3-month ACV. So how much annual contract value have they won over the last 3 months? What's their win rate over those same last 3 months? What's their average sales price over those last 3 months? And then the last one, that bottom right quadrant there, in my opinion, it's the most objective measure of a seller success. It is the ACV per completed good fit demo. So what this is saying, and this is where, again, sort of maximizing the number of opportunities a rep gets with their output, it enables us to say, look, Steven sold 200K last month, Guillaume sold 200K last month, but Guillaume did it with only 50 demos, Steve did it with 100 demos, right? So Guillaume is 2 times more efficient and effective for the business. If I gave Guillaume more at bats, we would get more in return. So that is how we measure things.
More efficient.
I made you the good guy in that story. So that is one of those are the 4 things that we measure. And then you see here, we're not measuring them against all of the account executives. If you're a new rep, we're not measuring you against the top performing account executives. All we're doing is saying, okay, you're a corporate account executive, and I'm going to assume that you're now fully ramped. If you're not, we're only measuring you against the unramped pool. But you're a corporate account executive, you're fully ramped. I'm just going to compare you against the average of all of the other ramped AEs. So not the top guy or girl, or not the worst performing person, just the average. And that's what that black dotted line is there. And then you see those deviations above and below. And that's what dictates the score. So a score of 5 is the average. And then you can be, if you're perfect score across the board, it would be an 8 in every category. And this is one of the controversial things that some people think is controversial, is that based upon their performance, so you can see in this case, 7.45, this rep is on a tear, one of our highest performers in the corporate segment. Based upon that lead scoring that we talked about earlier, those better opportunities and better fit demos on the inbound team are getting routed to that person, because now we're maximizing. It's like in basketball, right? Where you give the girl with the hot hand and can't miss a shot. You just keep beating her. That's essentially what we're doing. We're giving those higher quality ones. And again, in the question I always get, well, doesn't that then set up like a person that might have had a bad month or a bad 2 months? Isn't it a cycle they can't get out of, because now they're getting lower quality leads? We understand that those leads have a different win rate and a different potential. And so it's all about, are you outperforming what the model says that leads win rate and ASP should be? And if you are, that's how you move up the tier and you get more and higher, better quality.
And I'm guessing also with over time, you can have like that data. So for example, if you have, let's say, like a track record of AE that did, let's say, like 5 months where they were underperforming, and then they started like closing a bit more, getting better and better, and eventually, like coming to the top tier, you can basically show, like to others, like, okay, it's not gonna be like a vicious circle where it's gonna get worse. You can also go up, and
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why we do it over a trailing 3 months is because we know, there's highs and lows in sales. And if we did it every month, there might be a lot of volatility. So 3 months over a full sort of rolling quarter, it smooths that out a little bit. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember having a conversation, a one-to-one with one of my account executives when I was a frontline manager, and going through the scorecard with her. And, when I told her, hey, you're a 7 now, you're 6, like we were able to increase that win rate that we talked about last month. You're doing really well. Keep it up. It seems like it's really paying off, and that extra, enablement that you went to is helping. In her mind, last month, she like was a 5. And so she was like, hey, I could tell it, the leads, they feel so much better. They're a whole lot better. In reality, she was a 7 the month prior. It's just sort of performance for sellers most of the time is the 6 inches between their ears. But it does certainly have an effect on their output.
And a question I have is the lowest performer. Do you have some sort of like a program to help them leveling up? So for example, let's say if they go below 5, then they are kind of like forced to spend at least, I don't know, like 4 hours per week learning something new or doing specific set of tasks so they can get better. Have you like started set up something similar, or?
Yeah, there is an enablement component to it. So you're going and attending extra enablement sessions can help push you up that branch. We do look at it as a way to focus on improving performance. So if you're like a 2 or lower, for a month or 2 months in a row, that's sort of on watch. If it happens 3 months, that's when we start to do performance improvement plans. But again, it's gone through month after month after month, and so all of the sellers know exactly where they stand. It's never a surprise if we do a formal performance improvement plan. Sort of know that, had a feeling this was coming. Okay, let's focus on, and by seeing the scorecard and these 4 things, sort of every month what the 1 or 2 things are that we need to coach and maybe improve on. So
Nice.
ASP might be really high. ACV per completed good fit might be really high, but the win rate's really low. That gives me an indicator that, hey, maybe you're holding out too much for that high price, and you're just not willing to give a little bit of a discount to make the customer feel good. And if you did that and maybe lower the ASP just a little bit, your win rate would go up, right? So now I need to have like something tangible to coach on and help the seller with as well.
Awesome. And there is a question from the audience regarding like the percentage of deal flow coming from inbound versus outbound in terms of ARR, for example.
It's about 60-40. It's about a 60-40 split. So
okay.
It's getting pretty close to even.
40 outbound?
Yeah.
Okay. And in outbound, you basically go only after like the bigger accounts, or do you also go after like smaller accounts because you can close them faster?
Yeah, it's mostly put our efforts on sort of the corporate plus, right? So, five sellers or more. And we tend to be a little bit more opportunistic in the smaller ones as they come in.
And do you see a bit of seasonality in the business, like
We do.
summer being a bit slower, or
Yeah, we do. There is definitely a seasonality curve to our business. The other piece, much to my chagrin, people like myself are our ideal market, so we're selling to sellers, and so that makes our months a little bit more back weighted, unfortunately. So in certain months, so yeah, there is certainly a seasonality aspect to our business.
Okay, so it's basically summer and December that are basically slow months, and
no, December is huge month for us. Summer is a little bit slower, but yeah, we do see we're on a fiscal calendar year, and
Okay.
the end of quarter months are always the largest. So sort of steps up month 1, 2, 3, and then we sort of 1, 2, 3 do it all over again.
Nice, interesting.
Yeah. I think, just as a sort of finally wrapping up, some of the things that we talked about here, this again sort of focuses on the post customer. And again, one of the things, and I've seen this multiple times now, and so why our feelings are really strong. We talked at the very beginning just a little bit about the history of Discover.org and ZoomInfo and some of the acquisitions that we've made with RainKing and with ZoomInfo and some of the others. In every one of those scenarios, when you lined up the sales teams, the Discover.org team, which was the acquirer of RainKing and the acquirer of ZoomInfo, we almost always did have significantly less headcount. In both of those cases, we acquired teams from a sales perspective that were larger than the team that we had. Okay. Yet the output of that team was always higher on the Discover.org side. And so what we've been able to show throughout these acquisitions is by having this model of specialization where our account executives are only focused on new business. They don't do the onboarding, they don't do the training, they're not involved in retention, they're not involved in upsell. It allows them to have that singular focus, and their output is far greater. And it's having, acquisition after acquisition after acquisition. We get in, we have that conversation, and then ultimately, it is a nice story for us to be able to show. We can say, here's Sam that came from the RainKing side, here's Will that came from ZoomInfo, and now they can go to the team at one of our most recent acquisitions, Chorus, and say, look, I came from the model that you are today. I'm in this model, and unequivocally, I can show that my performance has increased. And so we are able to get much more from our team members, produce at a higher level, and be more efficient by having that role specialization at every step of the funnel.
And when you do an acquisition like Chorus, what's kind of like your idea behind it? Is it to figure out ways to integrate like products, and it's going to take a bit of time, and then like do the team work totally separately? Like, do they stay working on their product, and then later on there is kind of like a merger, or how exactly does that work?
Yeah, our CEO talked about the strategy a little bit in our last earnings call. The things that we're looking for is, is there perhaps maybe a unique data asset or data point that would bolster the ZoomInfo product, or is it a software that ties in really well to sort of the go-to-market operating system? And frankly, here's how we view that, what we're building, and ultimately how we utilize our own solution all along the way to build that machine. The other thing that we looked at is what we just talked about. Maybe they have an industry-leading technology. It ties in really well with a solution for a seller and for the go-to-market motion. But maybe they just haven't optimized how they're getting it to market, but they've got a great product. And that, I think, was Chorus to a T. And so now we're able to take that great product, take the level of efficiency that our sellers have, bring that to that team, and then also expand that product offering across all of my existing sellers and account and Tim's account managers, who leads our R&G organization. So those are some of the things that we think about, from an M&A standpoint. But as we go to market and what we're focused on delivering for our customers, and whether you know of ZoomInfo or not, I think a lot has changed significant, since the DiscoverOrg and ZoomInfo combination, and then with the acquisitions that we've made since then, is the way that we view this and what we're trying to build for the customers. That everything from a go-to-market standpoint, I talked about data at a lot of those steps. There is an intelligence layer that will power all of those motions, whether that's your first-party data, right, on your response times, the KPIs that matter most to you. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is. There is a data layer that will then inform and help you make decisions, sort of this workflow layer of, should they go into this sequence? Should they go to this account executive? Should we score it this way or that way? And then ultimately dictate, okay, now how do you go out and engage with either the prospect or your customer in the solutions that you use? And so all those little Z's and words where you see that, those are where we have different offerings, and now conversation intelligence with the acquisition of Chorus, to be able to help our customers have this end-to-end go-to-market motion with the data layer and the software to enable that process.
Nice, really interesting.
Thank you. So I've questions. I know we've hit a bunch, but I think that's it from a deck standpoint, and I know we're close to time.
Yeah, we're close to 1 hour, so maybe I want to be cautious of your time. I know you're on holiday, so maybe we can just ask one more question. Yes, this can be interesting. Some people were wondering, how much referral do you get from because this is something we discussed that in one of our previous webinar also. It's some sales rep don't always ask for referral. And you actually have a big team of outbound sales reps. So do you apply this strategy of, okay, my outbounds, they're gonna go get existing customers, have chat with them in order to get intros or referrals to other customers, so they can basically have a higher closing rate?
Yeah, we're not as good as in that area as we probably should be. To your point, we have a big sales team, we have a big customer base. Certainly our account managers, our customer success managers are looking to ferret those things out and then push those over to the new business org. Some of our best account executives are doing that, where they're asking, hey, it was great working with you. You found a lot of value. Do you have a buddy or two that you think might be helpful? Because those tend to win quicker. You have that social proof that's coming from their friend. But we don't ask as much as we should be, and frankly, we don't have an automated process to prompt the rep to be asking that.
Okay. Yes, I feel like this is a common pain for
it is
for many companies, because also on your end you have a team that is really focusing on expansion and kind of growing the accounts. So maybe it's on their end to also try to get the referral, but at the same time they want to focus on the account, so it might be also a bit tricky.
Yeah, that's why we do a pretty good job in the customer base getting those sort of things, because they have a lot more time to build a relationship. We're pretty high velocity. Our sales cycle is pretty short. It's pretty easy when you see ZoomInfo, the value you can get as a seller. And so, we talk all the time about how we can set an appointment on a Monday, have that demo, they buy by Wednesday, they're up and running and seeing value by Friday. So it really is a quick turnaround. And so I think part of some of the, not an excuse, but some of the reasons why I've heard is I just didn't feel comfortable asking. It was so short. But even though the argument could be made that, well, he saw the value so quickly, why wouldn't you ask if there's somebody else that you could help?
That's really cool. I mean, we're close to the hour. I just want to do, first of all, I want to thank you for your time, especially you being on holiday. So thanks. And second thing, something I like to do is please write in the chat the one key takeaway you have from this entire webinar, because I think it's always great, to kind of sum up, and even for you actually. So for me, the things that I really appreciated, first, it's your take on, you know, like after 6 acquisitions, seeing that when people specialize, they can really get better. And this is where you see the higher conversion rate. For me, that was really interesting. Second part is time to answer, and really like the speed of having to answer like in less than 90 seconds for leads. For me, that was also like a game changer, because this is definitely like something I didn't thought it has such an impact, like the 10x factor you mentioned. It's crazy. And third thing I would say, because you mentioned it a lot, measure. Measure every steps if you want to take conclusion. So that's,
those are definitely a thing. So, we made, we've made a lot of mistakes, but as we started to both sort of measure and take stock of what's happening at every step, it enables us to like fix and pivot quickly, or, as I said, to continue to lean in. And one of the other areas that I beat it a lot, the specialization piece. It was one thing that early on, we ran a really pretty lean organization. And so like we did sort of force people to do multiple things, but then we realized, hey, if we can start to split some of those things up, I know we'll have to bring in some extra heads, but we'll get a lot more out of the employees, and they can be singularly focused.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks a lot. Before we go, where can people like get in touch? I see like some comments of people really enjoying the webinar, so that's cool. If someone wants to get in touch with you or follow like ZoomInfo, what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn at Steven Bryerton. I'm on Twitter as well. Not as much on Twitter, but LinkedIn is usually a good one to get to me. And then ZoomInfo.com for about our solution, our offering. Again, we've grown a lot over the last 18 months, and there's a whole lot more data and software behind what we're doing, and we might be able to help you get that sort of 1% better, depending on what you need.
Nice. Thanks a lot, Steven. Have an amazing early day, and talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thank you, Gal.